Today we'll talk about logical fallacies. And in logical fallacies, we're going to talk about the second kind, that is fallacies of insufficient evidence. Let's see its definition. Mistakes in reasoning in which the premises, though relevant to the conclusion, fail to provide sufficient evidence for the conclusion. As we know, when we argue, we will have two parts, premises and conclusion. We know premises must support conclusion to justify the argument. When we present premises which are unable to provide enough evidence or reason that one can feel that the conclusion is justified, we will say that there is a mistake in reasoning, and that mistake will create a fallacy of insufficient evidence. It has different kinds, which are 9 in number. So we can say there are 9 fallacies of insufficient evidence. First one is inappropriate appeal to authority. When an arguer cites a witness or authority who is unreliable, will say that this fallacy is inappropriate appeal to authority. The question is how we will decide that the authority or source is unreliable. There are 8 reasons or circumstances which can make a source or authority unreliable. Let's see them one by one. First circumstance or situation is when the source is not a genuine authority on the subject at issue. Now the question is, who is an authority? An authority is a person who possesses special knowledge, competence, or expertise in a particular field. The most obvious way to commit the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority is to appeal to a person who is not a genuine authority on the subject at issue. Let's see this example. My barber told me that Einstein's general theory of relativity is a lot of hogwash. I guess Einstein wasn't as smart as everybody thinks he was. What does it mean? Because the arguer's barber presumably is not an authority on Einstein's general theory of relativity, this argument commits the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority. Such fallacies are found in advertising. Look at this another example. Hi, I'm heavyweight boxing champ Buster Brawler. After a tough night in the ring, my face needs some tender loving care, leather sensitive skin shaving gel. You can't get a smoother, closer shave. Look at it. The arguer may be an expert on knocking out opponents in the boxing ring, but because he's no expert on the comparative virtues of shaving products, so the argument is fallacious. Let's see the next circumstance. When the source is biased or has some other reason to lie or mislead, fallacy will occur. When a person keeps his or her interest in her or his mind while sharing information and mold it in his or her favor, he or she is biased. Such circumstance can also lead us to the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority. Let's see its example. Mrs. Cox has testified that her son Willie was home with her at the time when Willie is alleged to have shot Steve Wilson. Even though Willie's fingerprints were found on the murder weapon and 6 witnesses have identified Willie as the assailant, I can't believe that a good woman like Mrs. Cox would lie to protect her son. I think Willie is innocent. In this example, the testifier has an obvious motive to lie, that is, maternal love. Such motivation can create appeal to authority that is fallacious. Now move to the next reason or circumstance, that is circumstance number 3, condition number 3. It is when the accuracy of the source's observations is questionable. A source may also be unreliable, if we have reason to doubt the accuracy of his or her observations or experiences. Let's see the example. Jerry, who was listening to heavy metal music on his iPod, claims he heard the victim whisper his name from more than 100 feet away. Jerry has always struck me as a straight shooter, so I have to believe that Jerry really did hear the victim whisper his name. Let's see in this example, we can easily doubt the reliability of the witness's observation. A person who is listening to iPod and he's listening to heavy metal music, how can he hear a whisper away from 100 feet? So as a result, these are appeals to authority which are fallacious. Now look at the fourth circumstance or reason. It is when the source cited, that is a media source, a reference work, or an internet source, is known to be generally reliable, generally unreliable. Generally speaking, it is reasonable to accept claims made in reputable newspapers, magazines, encyclopedias, radio and television news programs, and internet websites. But we must be cautious about accepting claims found in sources that we have reason to believe are generally unreliable. Here's an example from the Weekly World News, a once popular supermarket tabloid. Look at the example. Scientist research reveals it takes 3 million years for a human soul to reach heaven, and no one from Earth has arrived there yet. Given the obvious weaknesses of the reported argument and the fact that tabloids like the Weekly World News are known to connect outlandish stories, an argument based on an appeal to the authority of the Weekly World News would be fallacious. So let's move to fifth circumstance. See what is the circumstance number 5. When the source has not been cited correctly or the cited claim has been taken out of context. The fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority can also be committed if the arguer has not cited a source correctly. It means that you are picking a source and that source is incorrect. Let's see its example. See, it states in the Constitution that there must be a wall of separation between church and state. Publicly funded school vouchers clearly violate this wall of separation. Therefore, publicly funded school vouchers are unconstitutional. Let's explain it. Though many people believe that the phrase wall of separation is found in the Constitution, it actually appears in a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury, Connecticut Baptist Association in 1802. For the reason this appeal to authority is fallacious. It's not the part of Constitution, but rather it's the letter written by Thomas Jefferson. So let's see the circumstance number 6. It is when the source's claim conflicts with expert opinion. It's once said, the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but that's the way to bet. Much the same can be said about expert opinion. Though experts are often wrong, sometimes spectacularly so, it is generally unwise to accept a claim that conflicts with a clear expert consensus. Let's see the example. Dr. Duane Gish, a biochemist with a PhD from Berkeley and former senior vice president of the Institute for Creation Research, has argued that there is no credible evidence supporting the theory of evolution. In view of Dr. Gish's expertise on the subject, we should conclude that evolution is myth. Because an overwhelming majority of scientists disagree with this view, it would be fallacious to accept this conclusion simply on the authority of Dr. Gish. So it will lead to the fallacy. Let's take another circumstance. Let's consider another circumstance is circumstance or situation number 7, when the issue is not one that can be settled by expert opinion. Let's see, some issues are so inherently controversial that they cannot be settled by appeals to expert opinion. To understand this, let's see the example. Dr. Stanford P. Higginbotham, a leading social philosopher, has argued that capital punishment is always morally wrong. Given Dr. Higginbotham's impressive credentials, we should conclude that capital punishment is always morally wrong. See, topics such as the morality of capital punishment and the meaning of life are issues on which no expert consensus exists or is likely to exist. Consequently, debates on these issues cannot be settled by appeals to authority. So they will be fallacious. Now see, circumstance number 8. When the claim is false or highly improbable on its face. The more improbable a claim is in itself, the less willing we should be to accept it merely on the say-so of a witness or an authority. If we accept an extraordinary claim on authority, and it is more likely that the alleged authority is lying or mistaken, then it is that the claim is true. We commit the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority. Let's see the example to understand circumstance number 8. Old Doc Perkins says he has an 80-year-old friend who can run a 100-yard dash in less than 10 seconds. How is it possible? Old Doc is one of the most trusted members of this community. So, if Old Doc says he has an 80-year-old friend who can run a 100-yard dash in less than 10 seconds, I, for one, believe him. This claim, considered independent of Old Doc's report, is so improbable that it should be rejected unless strong additional evidence is provided. To be continued. To understand other kinds, just wait for